Today, we're diving deep into a crucial concept for healing attachment trauma. It's called the reflective function. We'll explore how this important skill helps us understand ourselves and others, especially those with anxious and avoidant styles of attachment. Because trauma often leaves hidden encrypted messages in the form of symptoms, behaviors, or patterns, the reflective function is a joint effort of both partners to decipher this code, understanding the underlying meaning and origin of these messages in ourselves and our partner. Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship. I'm Tom Philp, your host, and as a therapist, I've spent over 10,000 hours helping couples work through their trauma so they can repair ruptures, heal their wounds, and communicate from a place of wholeness and connection. Let's get started. Okay, as I mentioned in the opening, we're going to talk about something today called the reflective function. And this comes straight out of the attachment literature. So what is the reflective function? Basically, it's the ability or the capacity to mentalize or to reflect on how we think about our thinking and our feeling. So it's being able to have, another term they use is theory of mind, meaning being able to think about how we think and think about how we feel and be able to understand that accurately and also be able to understand that in others. Why is this such a crucial capacity for healthy relationships and emotional regulation? Because when we can reflect on ourselves, what happens is it allows us to have more empathy for our partner and ourselves. It opens up problem-solving capabilities. It creates self-soothing, and it allows us to navigate conflict better as well as just general interpersonal skills. When we can be able to reflect on our own thinking, why did I do that? What was behind that? What might have caused me to act or behave in that way? Is this a pattern? What feelings might have motivated me to say that or act in such a way? Those kinds of questions we take for granted a lot of times, but sometimes they're very implicit. And we don't often think about, oh, well, that's really a highly advanced skill, because it really is. And that skill is developed through attunement with our caregivers. So the ability to reflect, or the reflective function, as I'm talking about here today, is through thousands of interactions with our caregivers, where we learn to put our thoughts and feelings into perspective and to understand how our own mind and the minds of others work. Every time our parents help us be able to reflect on our behavior, reflect on what we were really feeling, understand the difference between primary, secondary emotions, help us reflect when we're being defensive or anxious, and they offer us that safe haven that we so need and crave for during those times, helps us be able to explore ourselves, our own thoughts, feelings, and motivations. So that's the reflective function, and it is very, very important in understanding how to navigate our relationships, as well as being able to heal trauma. So let's talk about what happens if you fall into the more anxious attachment style. What does the reflective functioning look like, or how might it be more challenging for you if you have more anxious attachment? First thing you need to know, those with anxious attachment, the way the reflective function shows up is that it conflates, it collapses oftentimes the inside world with the outside world. In other words, the anxious attachment style has difficulty distinguishing our own realities, our own anxieties, from reality. If I'm anxious, everybody must be anxious. So they oftentimes equate what they're feeling on the inside with what may be happening on the outside. So, for example, somebody doesn't show up for lunch, And so the conclusion for the anxiously attached person is, instead of, well, they were just busy, but rather, well, they don't really want to have lunch with me. I saw the excuse. I read the text. You could see right through that, and so see how they conflate those two realities. So they're pulling away because they don't love me, as opposed to they're just busy. They can't make a lunch because they don't like my company, as opposed to they just had something come up and it was an emergency and they couldn't make it. So you can see by these examples where the reflective functioning is what's happening on the inside of the individual is automatically assumed to be what reality is about. And so as a result, the anxiously attached person tends to do a lot of mind reading and catastrophic thinking. If I'm feeling anxious, then others must be feeling anxious too, and they're causing my anxiety. They tend to over-focus on the other's perceived intentions and feelings without truly understanding them. So you didn't just hurt me, but you intentionally meant to hurt me. And being able to distinguish for the anxiously attached person between somebody's behavior versus their intentions can be difficult. They tend to struggle to regulate their intense emotions without external validation. As we've talked about many times on this podcast, the anxiously attached person needs a lot of reassurance. They need a lot of other soothing. That's part of how they soothe themselves, is they reach out and they need that reassurance and that validation from others that they're good enough, that they're measuring up. And so they have difficulty reflecting on their own role in relational dynamics as well. What did I do to perhaps cause that bad interaction? I didn't like the way that went. What might have been my role? My husband was on the couch and he was doing fine watching the game, and I came over, and the next thing I know, we're in a fight. And what did I do? How might have I contributed to that fight? Did I catch him at a bad time? Should I have asked to talk to him some other time? And when he said no, or he didn't make eye contact, I immediately saw that as rejection. And he doesn't care about me, and he doesn't want to talk about my feelings, and he doesn't care about my feelings. He only cares about basketball. Did I immediately make assumptions and mind read and catastrophize what might have happened without my ability to look at myself in that situation? So that's a little bit about the anxious attachment style and how they might be challenged in terms of the reflective function. Now, the avoidant attachment style is almost just the opposite. They act as if the outside world has little or no bearing on their inside world. So no matter what goes on around them, they tend to dismiss or simply intellectualize their emotions and others as well. They have difficulty accessing their own internal world. I feel numb. I feel fine. They might disassociate. They have difficulty being able to draw on their own feelings as a way to be able to get the information from their feelings that informs what's happening in their life and their world. And this is where the more avoidant attachment style really has challenges, because they lack the ability to understand what they feel, to draw on those feelings as valuable information about their relationships, especially with their partner. They may also misinterpret others' bids for connection as demands or threats. So their partner comes to them, they're a little bit upset. Hey, I'd like to talk. I know you're watching the game, but I really love to be able to, do you have a few minutes? And instead of them looking at that for, oh, well, they're upset and they want some connection here. God, they're so demanding and they just want to control everything. They want to tell me how to feel. They want to tell me what to think. And so they don't see it as a sense of connection, but rather as a sense of demand or controls. They also can lack poor empathy for others. Because they can't draw on their own emotional needs, And because they're out of touch with their own feelings, they often really struggle to be able to empathize, to understand the emotions and feelings of others. As I said earlier, they might see others' emotions as a way of trying to control them, or as a demand or a threat, as opposed to, oh gosh, they're angry, but underneath that anger, I know they're just scared. I know they're really just scared. And I can just sit with them and I can be there and I can understand that. So instead of having that kind of insight, they really struggle because, again, they aren't able to sort of understand their own emotions and how that informs their relationships. So they really struggle to understand the emotions of others. And again, they have difficulty reflecting on the impact that their withdrawal creates on others. If they shut down, if they intellectualize their emotions, if they struggle with empathy, then really they have a difficult time being able to sit with other people's emotions and understand them. And so they tend to withdraw and they tend to pull back, and maybe physically, but certainly emotionally as well. And because of that, there's a tendency to focus on external logic rather than on internal states. So if I can just wrap my head around what you're saying, and if I can just really be able to, analyze and tear apart, then I'll get to the core of what's happening here, and I'll be able to understand it, and I'll be able to give you a logical response back that should be able to end our argument. The problem is they don't understand why their logical response isn't accepted by their partner, and their partner is just left reeling because there's no emotional response to it. It's just all intellectualized. So that is certainly some of the ways that the more avoidant style struggles to be able to reflect on their own behavior and how the outside world impacts their inside world. So what can you do if you're an anxious person to help with the reflective functioning? Well, one of the first things you can do is practice self-soothing and emotion regulation before engaging with others. So if you want to go to your partner who's sitting down on the couch, you might recognize, first of all, that maybe your partner doesn't want to talk right then. Or maybe they're in the middle of something and this isn't a good time. And when they act upset or inconvenienced and you sense that, it's not a rejection of you, it's just poor timing. So go and ask them. Be able to self-soothe and ask them, is this a good time to talk? Hey, this was happening. Do you have a moment? So on and so forth. So being able to practice self-soothing and emotion regulation opens up a space for you to be less likely to misinterpret. Another thing you have to do, and this I've seen is a real struggle with more anxious style of attachment, is you've got to be able to challenge your assumptions. You've got to be able to challenge your assumptions. If you see your partner pulling away, it may not be a rejection of you. It might be something going on with them. And if you automatically assume that my partner doesn't want to hear my feelings, this throws me back into my trauma where I don't feel good enough. I'm constantly trying to make relationships work. It's all up to me. If you don't challenge those assumptions, then those assumptions will lead you down the same path every single time. You'll repeat the same patterns in your relationship every single time. So one of the things you can do is start journaling to track your thoughts and feelings and to identify those triggers. It's really important for that to happen because you want to be able to identify your triggers and the associated thoughts and feelings that come along with them. You can't challenge something that you can't see. So this is why the reflective function is so important in being able to go, oh, I see how I was seeing that situation. I automatically assumed that because they couldn't break away and have lunch with me, that somehow they were rejecting me, that something was wrong with me, and it may have had nothing to do with me at all. So you've got to seek clarity directly from others as well. Use this phrase that I use all the time. Can you help me understand? I'm not sure what that meant when you wanted to finish the game. It felt a little bit rejecting, but it may not have meant that. Can you help me understand what that meant? So you've got to be able to seek that kind of feedback, which I know is it's very sensitive to ask for that. Because what if they did say, yeah, I didn't really want to talk right then. I was really hoping we could just wait till after the game. And so being able to seek that feedback can be a vulnerable thing to do, but it also can be extremely important because you're not going to be able to see the inside, how it's different from the outside, without being able to challenge those assumptions. So those are some things that the more anxious style can do. What about the more avoidant style? Well, one of the things they can do is they can take small steps toward emotional recognition. They really need to be able to start to feel their feelings and the physiological correlates. So what am I feeling in my body? Where might I be feeling this? What does this feeling indicate to me? When I have this feeling, what do I tell myself about what is happening? And so being able to get in touch with their feelings is going to be very important. And being able to find the bodily sensations as clues to their emotions. All core emotions have a physiological component to it. We use these phrases like hothead because we tend to hold stress and anger in our head and our shoulders. We use the term heavy heart because oftentimes sadness and hurt, it resides in our heart. Or we talk about butterflies in our stomach because oftentimes we feel anxious and it feels like it sits in our stomach. So being able to determine what is the physiological correlates that go along, what are the places and the sensations in my body that are giving rise to these emotions, very important for the more avoidant style. And learning to tolerate discomfort and intimacy. Oftentimes, the avoidant at any sign of discomfort, especially like anxiety, they immediately go and they turn off their emotions. They are masters at being able to lock that down, and for good reason, because often than not, the environment they grew up in was not tolerating of their feelings. So why would you have feelings if there was nobody there to receive them? Why would you have feelings in an environment if nobody would allow you to have those feelings or could tolerate those feelings in you? You don't. You learn to shut them off. And so practicing active listening and asking open-ended questions is really important to be able to challenge the reflective functioning in yourself in the more avoidant style, as well as being able to identify patterns of withdrawal and reflecting on their underlying fears. Part of the reason that more avoidant styles tend to withdraw is because of the fear that comes up, the fear of getting into an argument, the fear of escalation. And those may be well-founded fears, but unless they're able to stay engaged a little bit longer, unless they're able to stay engaged with their partner and hold those uncomfortable feelings a little bit longer than they would normally, they're not ever going to be able to use their feelings to guide any kinds of solutions they want in their relationships. Okay, if we put all of this together, what does this mean? If we're able to have ourselves and our partner be able to reflect better and increase our reflective functioning, what does that mean for the relationship? Well, first of all, we can understand each other's internal worlds better. Remember, a relationship is an emotional bond. It's not a negotiation. It's not a contract. We're not just two brains showing up. We are emotionally connected to one another. So being able to understand each other's internal worlds is absolutely crucial, and the way we do that is by talking about feelings and perceptions. Another benefit of this is that we develop empathy for each other, for sure. We definitely want to be able to step into each other's shoes and understand feelings and intentions behind our partner's behavior. We need to be able to communicate more effectively, right? Communicate breaks down when we get caught in these cycles. But if we can start expressing what's happening internally with us, this opens up a whole new door of communication in our relationships. We can also learn to co-regulate better, so we can learn how to reach our partner and soothe them so that we don't get caught and escalate into cycles. And more importantly, we can let our partner reach us and soothe us so we don't get triggered as often either. And then finally, we can begin to process the traumas together. We can understand more when our partner is being triggered, what their trauma is indicating to them about what's happening in the relationship. And we can move from a place of triggering those traumas to a place of protecting those traumas in our partner. And that's really crucial. I often say to couples, when you can move from a place where you trigger each other's traumas to protecting each other's wounds and hurts and traumas, then you've opened up a whole new relationship and a way of being with each other. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful in terms of understanding more about the reflective function. This is very crucial in the life of relationships. It's very crucial in just our day in and day out behavior, being able to understand how it works, evolves, our feelings, our intentions behind what we do. Thank you all so very much for listening. As always, I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time.